Welcome everyone to Buddha Center. My name is Jeff Allen. Once again today we are looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So fortunate, this is a text that includes all of the stages of the path that are necessary for us to become a Buddha. And it's very rare that in a human lifetime you're able to meet with such pure teachings that show a true path, that you don't have to guess about or wonder how it goes. Lama Tsongkhapa, because of the kindness of Lord Atisha and Buddha Shakyamuni, is so clear in the presentation of this text that we have in English in 3 volumes. In Tibetan, it's in 1 volume or 1 big pecha. But we just are so fortunate that even the outline in the English translation is on the top of the text, so we can see where it all fits, and we can become really familiar with that outline, because once we know the outline, then in our meditation we're able to fill the details in about the outline and really enhance our practice more and more and more. And Rinpoche really encouraged me to become familiar with the outline of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So by doing exercises like this in our minds, thinking about the teaching shared for beings of 3 capacities, and thinking about how those 3 capacities fall within the broader explanation of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and how all of those points are necessary to ripen our minds or to cut the root of cyclic existence if it's the wisdom realizing emptiness. So all of these stages are necessary. All of these capacities are necessary. So we need to kind of saturate our minds over and over again with these qualities, with these ideas, so that they become part of who we are, and eventually only who we are when we become Buddha. So let's get started. Let's get into a posture that's good for us in terms of sustainability. It's good for us to familiarize our body with being able to be in a posture that in the future, when our mind can focus for longer periods of time, won't be an obstacle to that event. So we get into a posture, very important to have our back straight. But then also we have the description of the 7-point Vairocana posture that you find in many of the great texts that many of the great yogis, masters, got into in order to get their minds very, very clear. And, so the 7-point Vairocana posture, real quickly, putting our legs into the Vajra posture, whatever cross-legged posture we can, having our right hand in our left with our thumbs touching, making a diamond pattern, signifying the union of method and wisdom, having our back straight, vertebrae like a stack of coins, it is said, and the entire vertebrae. It's a tendency that we have in the West to arch our backs. Jeffrey Hopkins was saying this in a teaching that I heard recently, and then we feel like an arched back is a very good meditation posture, but that's not the meditation posture. The meditation posture is very straight, like a stack of coins. So it's just really, sometimes you can, when you're you just kind of sit and start to get familiar. What would that look like? How would that feel? How would that, allow me to be very, very centered and sit for long periods of time? So we have our back and our vertebrae straight like a stack of coins, shoulders in a comfortable position that allow for our arms to slightly bow out, our head slightly forward, eyes slightly open, pointed at the tip of our nose, mouth in a comfortable position with our tongue on the top of the roof of the mouth against the teeth. And this allows for the saliva to flow, and as we will not be breathing through our mouth, we're breathing through our nose. This allows for us to not dry out in our mouths. So now we will begin to breathe in and out of our nose. So the point of this at the beginning of the class is to try to get our minds to a more neutral place from which we can plant virtuous seeds, from which we can gain the wisdom arisen from hearing, analysis, and meditation. In order to get that wisdom, we have to hear all of this very, very purely and be very focused And if we have the motivation of love and compassion, it makes the power of this truth that we're hearing so much stronger. So it's for this reason that we will set our motivation from a place that's more neutral. Our minds come into the teaching with so many distractions, so many attachments, so much anger, all of these different kinds of ideas that are not the idea, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So it's necessary to calm all of that storm down of our mind in order to then grow this beautiful idea of bodhicitta that says, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. I and this wish and all sentient beings are empty of true establishment. And here we see the ultimate and conventional bodhicitta, the emptiness of objective existence, which is the ultimate bodhicitta, and the love and compassion for all sentient beings without bias, that is the conventional bodhicitta. So we have to have this arisal from a very, very pure place. So we begin by bringing our mind back home, back to the breath, and then we'll add a visualization with accompanying prayers and so forth. So begin, we breathe through our nose in a very, very excuse me, very even fashion. It shouldn't be very quick or so slow we feel like we're drowning. Just normal breath, filling our lungs and our diaphragm all the way, breathing through our nose. And as we get to the top of the breath, exhaling very naturally and counting 1. Repeating the process, inhaling through our nose, bringing the breath all the way to the top, filling our lungs and our diaphragm. Just when we get to the top, exhaling and counting 2. So we'll begin with this exercise, is bringing our minds to the breath. And if your mind strays away, bring it back. The number will be the indicator. The breath is the indicator. That is the focal object. There are no other objects of observation. Don't let your mind become dull and sleepy. Don't let your mind become excited. Only focus on the breath, the breathing in and out through the nose, and the exhalation and the count. Now, as you're breathing in and out, focusing on the breath, the inhalation, the exhalation, counting the breath. Now imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of you, eye level, about 2 inches tall, maybe the size of your thumb, just about arm length in front of you. Beautiful, radiant, glowing. However you imagine Buddha Shakyamuni normally, imagine that image in the front generation in front of you. Focusing on the breath, inhalation, exhalation, count. Buddha Shakyamuni is there in the front generation. Three-dimensional, light body, the real Buddha Shakyamuni. Imagine it. Eye level in the space in front of you. Think about how lucky we are, how fortunate we are to be able to even think of the word Buddha, let alone imagine a being in front of us that we know so much about, who has so many excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. A being who has perfected wisdom, perfected love and compassion, perfected abilities and power. We're so lucky to have met with the truth that Buddha Shakyamuni has presented with our world in the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. First turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha was so kind to present us with the four superior truths, the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering, this is the superior truth of origin, this is the superior truth of cessation, and this is the superior truth of path. Presenting us with the suffering that we conclude is true, showing us how that suffering occurs, proving it can end, and showing us the path. We're so fortunate to have this. Now imagine from the image of Buddha Shakyamuni, all of a sudden there's an explosion of bodies of holy beings in the space in front of you. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is still there, but then all the holy beings are present now from Buddha Shakyamuni's image. They were all being contained in that one image of Buddha Shakyamuni. Now imagine that all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the merit field are in the space in front of you. Imagine Kensar Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Dorje Damdu, Demo Locha Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Geshe Aga, Geshe Ma Tenzin Ladrin La, all of these holy beings, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all of the holy beings of the extensive deeds lineage that's been so kindly passed from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya, to Asanga, and through all those incredible beings like Dharmakirti and Dignaga, and eventually through Salimpa to Lord Atisha, who's so kind to pass it through Drontompa to the Kadampa lineages, and then eventually we get to it through Lama Tsongkhapa and all of our kind masters. We see all of those beings in front of us. We see all the beings of the profound view lineage in front of us. Those beings that are so holy, that come from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri to Nagarjuna to Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Buddha Palita and Shantideva, and all these holy beings that we know of and we've read about, that all are so kind to help us shape our minds into the mind of a Buddha. They're all in the space in front of us. We imagine all of the lineage of blessings from Tilo and Naro, from Naro Tilo, all of these Tilo Naro and Milarepa and Marpa, and all of these holy beings that bring us the lineage of blessings, the tantric lineage that show us once we're bodhisattvas how to quickly, swiftly attain the state of Buddhahood. We see all these kind beings in the space in front of us, all of the deities in the space in front of us. Imagine that the highest yoga tantra deities are there, the yogic tantra deities, performing tantra deities, the action tantra deities. Imagine that all are there, and the 35 Buddhas are there, all of the protectors are there. Imagining, however you imagine the merit field, imagine that all of those holy beings are in the space in front of you. Now imagine that all around you are all sentient beings that you've brought here to be able to listen to this teaching, to be able to receive the blessings of all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas, and to be able to chant together. And you will lead these beings in practice, and imagine that they're all thinking about the meaning of these teachings as they're chanting these teachings. And it's because you've brought them all here. Imagine that you have countless hands that go out to bring all the beings from the hell realms, the hungry ghost realms, the animal realms, the human realms, the demigods and gods realms. Imagine that you're leaving no sentient beings whatsoever out when you bring them all here to be able to hear these prayers and hear this teaching. Imagine that they're all around. And now imagine that all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, all these holy beings, all these deities that make up the Mara field, are so full of bliss and happiness because they see that all sentient beings are assembled and are ready to hear what it will take to become Buddhas. And the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas have no other goal in mind than for us to all become Buddhas. That's all they wish for, and they're so happy that this is actually occurring, that everyone's here, there's no one's bickering, there's no bias, there's no problems, everything is just one thought, and that's how do I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. And then the merit field begins to almost erupt with bliss. Imagine it's shaking. There's just a blissful eruption that's happening. And now imagine that you and all sentient beings around you have a white Om on your crown signifying your body, a red Ah at your throat signifying your speech, and a blue Hum at your heart signifying your mind. And now imagine that from this eruption, from this bliss that the merit field's experiencing, suddenly white light rays and nectars start to shower down on you and all sentient beings that transform into white Oms and dissolve into your crown and purify all negativities of yours and all sentient beings' bodies. Now imagine from that same bliss that the merit field's experiencing, red light rays and nectars are coming out of all of these beings in the merit field and falling down like rain or like snow. And these red light rays and nectars are transforming into red ahs, dissolving into our throats and purifying ours and all sentient beings' speech. Now imagine from the same bliss that the merit field is experiencing, because all sentient beings are assembled here and all are wishing to become Buddhas. Imagine that there are blue light rays and nectars that are bubbling out of this bliss, that are snowing down and raining down on us, transforming into blue homes, dissolving into ours and all sentient beings' hearts, and transforming our minds into pure minds, into the Vajra mind. Just for a moment now, we imagine that our body, speech, and mind, and all sentient beings' body, speech, and mind have been transformed into the pure body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. With this in mind, let us recite the Heart Sutra. At the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, imagine that as we're reciting this, all sentient beings are reciting this, and all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are so happy, and that we are thinking about the explicit meaning of this text. What does this text mean? It doesn't mean that there isn't an eye or isn't an ear. It means there isn't an inherently existent eye or an inherently existent ear, because those things dependently originate. There's no findable, objectively existent eye or ear or nose or tongue. There's merely a conventional, subjectively existent eye that comes into being through dependent origination. That when we look for it, we see that the dependent origination brings it into the arisal. The dependent origination of this eye, we see the three levels of causes and conditions: dependent origination of wholes and parts, and then the dependent origination that is merely a name that through the power of a thought or a name that brings all of these phenomena into the subjective experience, the subjective existence that we then label as objectively existent. The object of negation is an objective existence that is an independent, solitary, findable, objective existence. So this is the object of negation that the Heart Sutra is pointing out explicitly. And then implicitly we find the Teata Om Gate Gate Parasangate Bodhisoha Swaha, we find that implicitly a being of sharp capacity can see that just contained in that mantra right in the Heart Sutra, we find the 5 Mahayana paths that are necessary for a bodhisattva to traverse, to go through in order to become a Buddha. And the bodhisattva's sole goal is to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings, so that implicitly we find the entire path that's taught and the understanding of the emptiness of that path, the understanding of the emptiness of the action, agent, and object. So when we recite this Heart Sutra and when we think about this Heart Sutra, it's important for us to think about the nature of reality that it's presenting, the ultimate truth that it's presenting. The Buddha never presented any higher final truth than the truth that's presented in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, the Madhyamika Prasangika view of emptiness, the middle way consequence view of emptiness. All other schools had some sort of form of grasping at arisal from other, but the Buddha and the masters of the profound view lineage were so kind to us to clarify this meaning of the perfection of wisdom according to the middle way consequence school. Nagarjuna and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Shantideva were so kind, Buddha Palita so kind to us to be able to clarify what this means. And the lack of true existence of all phenomena is a presentation. The negation is the objective existence of self and phenomena. So here we see this presentation in the Heart Sutra given that is the thing that can cut the root of cyclic existence. And it's the thing when combined with bodhicitta that will make us a Buddha. So we think about this and we think about the strength of this Heart Sutra. It shouldn't just be merely words that we're chanting. We should think about the strength of the words by the meaning of the words and how the words in this text and how the stages of the path that are being presented can transform our minds from the impure state that I'm experiencing right now in terms of apprehension and appearance into the state of a Buddha who's able to not only apprehend ultimate reality like a hearer, a solitary realizer, arhat in an abiding nirvana, but also able to simultaneously apprehend conventional existence. The Buddha is the only being who can simultaneously understand conventional and ultimate reality. And the only way that we can become a Buddha who can understand conventional and ultimate reality is to understand the wisdom, have the wisdom realizing emptiness that's coupled with the mind that's so expansive that it loves everyone without bias and has as its object of observation all sentient beings. So with that in mind, we should recite these prayers. We should think about the deep meaning of these prayers as we're reciting them, so it doesn't just become some task that we do, some order of operation. The Pabonko Rinpoche, it was said sometime you spend a lot of time with introductory prayers and so forth, and he said if I didn't do it, the whole teaching would be ruined. So please look at it like that and look at it like we're trying to saturate our minds with this truth and mature our minds. And sometimes we have to mature our minds even to get to the place to listen, mature our minds to get to the place where we have that point that Aryadeva makes about a student that's open-minded, intelligent, and willing to put in effort. So with that in mind, we'll recite the Heart Sutra in English. Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way, saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease, no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. So again, thinking about the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. And what those stages include are what a bodhisattva of sharp capacity can ascertain just from looking at this mantra, just from hearing this mantra. So become a bodhisattva of sharp capacity by realizing emptiness. But in the meantime, understand what a bodhisattva of sharp capacity is able to have shared with us. And this is all contained within this mantra. And see if you can allow your mind to circle the five paths over and over and over again until you can find yourself on one of them. Deyata onga de ga de baraga de barazanga de bodhisvadhyada onga de ga de baraga de barazanga de bodhisvadhyada om ga de baraga de barazanga de bodhisvadhyada om ga de baraga de barazanga de bodhisvadhyada om ga de baraga de barazanga de bodhisvadhyada. And keep in mind that the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, path of no more, the meditation, and the path of no more learning are all empty of inherent existence. Buddhahood is empty of inherent existence because it dependently originates. There is no findable, objective existence of Buddhahood, the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning. Emptiness is empty of inherent existence. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son, O family, thus it is, O son, O family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jibe nejo damba ne ngushe duchu ngai dudo jentru babo lama ibujin zi nezon gandro zo la jazelo agazamara jajana razamara begazamara jana. Aga zamara dajanara zamara ya be dia da onga de gade paragade parasangate budizo baba gonje zonji gai doji je budoji mebo doji shewa doji jagi baji metum bi jedanji je den gorie zo ngerin donja je jo je wa dan me don no be den dan de wa dan tomba jonjin bon zon zo joji dashi de jan den da de le jo. Now we imagine a perfect universe, perfect everything, in the form of this hand gesture. If you don't know it, just let your mind imagine a perfect universe, and that you're offering that to the teacher and all the lineage of holy beings back to the Buddha. All the holy beings, just imagine you're offering this perfect universe for a request to have this instruction given. So that's what this hand gesture resembles, is a perfect universe. Mount Meru, the four continents. So these, fingers here are four continents. The thing in the middle is Mount Meru, and it's kind of a Buddhist cosmology we find in the Abhidharma Kosha and other places. But this is what we're doing when we do this. We imagine a perfect universe, and this is the hand gesture that symbolizes that. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Yedam Guru Radha Mandala Gani Radhayami. Zanye Janan Zadye Janan La Janju Badu Danyi Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zananji Drala Beje Zanye Dubaryo. Zanye Jadan Zadye Janan La Janju Badu Danyi Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zananji Drala Beje Zanye Dubaryo. Sanye Jadan Zadye Janan La Janju Badu Danyi Jazuji Dagi Jiji Nanji Drala Benje Zanje Jubarjo. Profound, peaceful, elaboration-free, clear light and non-composite, such as the nectar-like Dharma I have discovered. Finding no one who can fathom this teachings, in silence I will retire into the woods. Beyond utterance, thought, and expression is the perfection of wisdom, which is unborn, unceased, and has the nature of space. It is the object of apprehension of self-realized wisdom. To you, the mother of the Buddhas of the three times, I pay obeisance. the one who enthused by, inspired by, the one who transformed into the reliable guide motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector, to you I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and the profound, who eternally shines forth the forever noble light rays, to you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you do not have bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Well, hello everyone. Here we are, Sunday again. We're breathing. Nagarjuna says Arya Nagarjuna says we should be amazed when we wake up in the morning based on the opposing factors to life. When we look at death will certainly come, and we have no idea when that's going to happen. We have so many examples of people who are sitting right next to us and are no longer here, and they didn't choose that day for the most part that they were going to die. We didn't know that it was going to be that day exactly for the most part a year before that it was going to be the day that they were going to die. And we see that over and over and over again in our lives that we don't have any certainty around exactly when we'll pass. If we had some kind of certainty, like there's supposedly some realms where you're going to live 500 years, so you can kind of, pace yourself out. You can say, well, I think I'll take this part of my life and I'll just focus on dancing. And in this part of my life, I'm going to focus on, riding bicycles, down mountains, But unfortunately, in my case, my experience was that I had, I think I was in my 30s, and I was living in Middletown. And I was living with an incredible person named Mike Patrick, very, very close friend of mine. And he was a professional downhill mountain bike racer. So that's what he did. And he was very, very good at it. He had many, many medals. He had trainers. He had all these vitamin packs. There was stuff in the fridge. I didn't even know it was like a science project of human being in our house. He had zero body fat. He was just, looked like just the stunning specimen of a, human individual, the way you could get yourself physically to this maximum place. And he also was a nut case. So he could ride down mountains, without any fear, going 1,000,000 miles an hour. So, we were living together, and this is right before I was going to go to India. I'm bad with chronology, but it's right around that time. I had found the Dharma, and I believe Rinpoche was here. Yeah, I lived over on college. Yeah, I believe Rinpoche was here at that time. So I was immersed in the Dharma, and I had gone out to Illinois to visit my mother. And I, left every, when you leave your house, you leave emergency contact where you're going to be and so forth. And I was just sitting on the couch. I remember clear as day in my mother's house, in her condo, I think it is, and at the time, and the phone rings, and it's Mike, and he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know who I am. He's just found a phone number. He was on his stationary bicycle, extending his life, exercising and taking his vitamins, and he suddenly had some sort of a blackout, and when he came to, he didn't know who he was or what was going on or anything. So I said, Mike, it's Jeff. This is a person that I left that was as clear as a bell. Was as focused on a conversation as anyone you'd ever met. One of the most present people I'd ever met, whilst also being a maniac and really into adrenaline. If you were there with him, he was so present. And suddenly I was speaking to someone who didn't know who I was, who wasn't there. So I sent another friend over. They took him to the hospital. They thought he had an epileptic seizure. And they sent him on his way with a bunch of drugs to help with epilepsy and with seizures. And suddenly this sort of, I get back, he's living a somewhat normal life. Another event happens. So now he thinks, I have this epilepsy. Big deal, right? It's something that I can take care of. And then another event happens and he loses kind of track of what's going on. The long story short, he has a brain tumor. He has to go to Sloan Kettering. They do all they can. They do the brain surgery. And he's at this point come out of the brain surgery. He had no real potential to live at this point. Right? So now he's still cheating death, my friend, in his mind. Right? So what is he doing? He doesn't have some awakening that it's time to do anything but get back on the bike, So as soon as he can, right, against his trainer's wishes, he's on his bike, he's taking his stuff again, he's doing a stationary bike, and he takes a silver in the World Downhill. And he's on the cover of Mountain Bike magazine, because he just had a brain tumor, and now he's taken a silver in the World Downhills, and he's for the mountain bikers, he's like a hero, right? He's like this amazing thing, like this indestructible human. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case for Mike, because very shortly after that, the brain tumor came back, right? That he thought was gone, and that was like that. He died very, very quickly. It's someone who in their mind was, not seeing this impermanence, and we don't see this impermanence. But when we really, really think about it, death will come. We don't have examples. Rinpoche always used to say, George Washington, this great being, right? Is he alive still? He was so great. He made the United States or whatever. He was the first president. Everyone knows who George Washington is, But what was he able to cheat death? Is Buddha still here? Is Nagarjuna here? Are any of these beings here? Is Khensur Geshe Wandak? Is his physical presence here? And the answer is no. So and did we know that even I would say the day of Rinpoche's passing, I still thought he might not. That's how that's how how I don't even believe that the time of death is I don't know it. I thought we had some more time. Based on what frame of reference? Based on what time? What certainty of time? I have more time with my dogs. I have more time with my loved ones. I have more time to do this or that. Based on what criteria do I have to say that? Do I have criteria based on the things that I see around me? Based on my own experiences to see that it's 100% true that I have this thing I call time? Is it 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years? How much time do I have? Is there certainty of that? And this is why we meditate on these things. So we recognize that if I'm attached to this life, I'm not a spiritual practitioner. If I basically die and have no chance to live and then come back and think that riding a bicycle, I'm sorry, riding a bicycle is going to somehow ride me out of suffering and make it so that in my future lives I'm going to have happiness. Wow, I'm not a spiritual practitioner, so what happens then? Most beings are involved in the ignoble. Therefore, most ordinary beings go to the lower realms of cyclic existence. Ordinary beings are attached to this life and aren't spiritual practitioners. Yeah, it's very serious stuff that we're talking about here. This isn't just like, if it doesn't make you a little emotional, you aren't getting to the core of the problem here, folks. If it's not causing some sensation in your body and making you rethink what you're going to do in an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or tomorrow or the next day, you're not letting it penetrate your mind. You may have had your mind hardened by the Dharma. They say it can happen. Just hardened with information that you haven't applied. Don't let this happen. Don't let your mind harden itself with information, just like you did, like all the stuff you know from school. It's just stuff you know. And in school you were like, oh, I don't even know why I'm learning this information. I'll never use it. And you didn't in most cases, or sometimes, right? A lot of it you didn't use. Don't make this information like that. This is information that we're supposed to be using to penetrate our minds and to change our minds, to change our lives. When we talk about, we think about people who've passed, and we think about, we get certain, especially people who are young who've passed, and we can think it all the way back to conception. Think about babies that weren't born. None of the mothers, not even that baby, that consciousness was thinking, this thing I adhere to will die. We have to think in these terms. Become really, as Venerable Rabbeinu Corden used to say, we have to taste the vomit of this cyclic existence and stop believing that it's so sweet. Understand what it is, not become depressed, become exhilarated that we know what it is, that we're stopping our way of living that's so confused and so diluted. I mean, I just see the wells of this information trickling into how I actually believe the world works, and trickling into how I interact with it and others, and see it just changing. And see myself starting to disbelieve myself a little more and more and more. And really that's what it's about. Because we're starting from a place that's pure mentally. We have a subtle mind that isn't all screwed up, but it doesn't what's thinking. It goes through all these other layers of consciousness where this grasping begins, where this grasping at the I and mine and you and me, and then making all of these distinctions, that we have such a difference, and failing to see that from the nature of reality perspective, in terms of whether I possess an inherently existent Jeff or that shoe possesses an inherently existent shoe, neither of us have either one of those things. We ultimately don't possess either of those things. Yet I based on how I interact with objects, and then I derive some sort of happiness or unhappiness from the interaction based on how I discriminate my reality. And it just screws things up over and over again, because nothing is the way that it seems like it is to me. So I put too much heaviness of I likey that, onto things that can't possibly possess that much likability. And I throw, because of all of this kind of fog of the way I look at things and my lack of good discrimination, all this dislikiness, disgust onto objects that couldn't possibly have that much, ugliness or yuckiness to them or enemy to them. It's merely this projection this subjective kind of existence that comes from my side. Because if all, beings had some kind of inherent objective existence, they would all be perceived by everyone the same way. You could even see, I remember a great Geshe used to say, even an axe murderer's mother's like, he was such a nice boy. He's such a wonderful being. I love him so much. Where even the rest of the world sees him as a monster. The mother would still see this being potentially, right? Potentially, as such a beautiful, beautiful object, right? So if a being possessed some inherent quality of this or that, if we could say that being is so inherently evil, then the mother couldn't see him as also lovable. It's a subjective kind of experience that's going on. Does that object have an objective reality to it that we can find? Is the flower a flower from its own side? When we look at it closer with a microscope, it's atoms, right? Cells, or Geshe Dorje Damdu says. And then we go closer to it, and it's just, protons, neutrons, and electrons. Where is that findable flower? But then when we look at and start to put it back together, we see that the protons, neutrons, and electrons we have atoms, we have cells, we have all of these things that come into being that allow our eye consciousness to not misperceive that which is suitable to be labeled as flower. So we have to understand that the object is merely this collection that we're bringing into our mind as this or that and as really objectively existent by the power of merely labeling it and by the power of coming into contact with it, paying attention to it, discriminating it as this or that, feeling some way about it, and then our mind goes this way or that way. And all the while we're grasping at ourselves and it as having inherent existence. So there's this foggy kind of lens that's at work at all times that's making us kind of discriminated a certain way once we've come in contact with it and paid attention to it. And now we're looking at it like this, so we can only have limited ways that we can, in our limited perspective, feel about it. And then those feelings give rise to attachment if we find it to be attractive, and hatred if we find it to be disgusting. And we want to get it quickly if we find it attractive and pull it towards us. And if it won't come quick enough, it causes us anxiety. And if we find it something gross and disgusting, we want to push it away. And if it doesn't get away quick enough, it causes our mind to sit in this horrible state. And we can see how our discrimination is creating all of these feelings that we don't like within us. And it's not only because we're looking at them a little wrong, we start to look at them less and less and less and less and less wrong and find out at the core we're looking at everything completely wrong. So it's so important. Yes, I apologize. I announced last week that we were starting at 10 again. I knew that this may happen. As I literally sat down, I was like, I should have sent a reminder out. I so apologize for that. It's all recorded. I do apologize to anybody who's coming on now. I know a few more people who are going to pop on as I think about it. And I should have used better. Here it is, right? If I had a bigger mind, here's a clear example. Oh, I have a teaching tomorrow. I've changed the teaching time. I said previously, right, that in a class on video, I don't remember who was there. I don't remember how many people I said that to. And then I'm not paying enough attention, right? And then I overlook, because of my limited perspective, what information would be best suitable to get it to as many people as possible, because my aim at the end of the day is to get the teachings to as many people as possible. Khenso Geshe Wanduk asked me to continue giving the teachings. So if my aim is to get the teachings to as many people as possible, it would make sense for me to convey that information in the clearest way and the best way, to make sure there were signs up, right? To make sure that there was no confusion about when it's going to start. But here's a clear example. We can just look at it in our daily life. My objective was to get everyone who's now on this screen to have been on this screen the whole time. I wanted everyone to get this teaching. But my limited mind, my inability to pay enough attention, I only discriminated a part of it. I eliminated certain parts of what I was perceiving that were really important to my getting this teaching to everybody in a timely fashion. So it's only through making my mind bigger and bigger, becoming more wise, filling up that side of meditation with analytical meditation and making my mind the smartest mind it can possibly be in relation to the nature of reality. And then using that shamatha meditation, the fixed meditation, to try to, then I have this mind over here that's so wise, that's so clear, that's like a laser of understanding, that can take the idea of ultimate reality and explain it in the clearest fashion through syllogisms, through the subject this is that because of this, and here's an illustration of why. And my mind is so flexible. But do you see what my mind's doing right now? It's going through syllogisms, and it's going through all of this analysis, and it's going through all of this wisdom and understanding, the wisdom arisen from hearing and the wisdom arisen from analysis. Now I need to take this calming mind, this shamatha, this fixed meditation, and get better and better and better and better and better at it. I need to be able to get to the point where I could fix my mind on an object of observation for up to 4 hours that comes from a union of calm abiding and special insight. This union of calm abiding and special insight at this 9th stage of the stages of get shamatha that occurs. This pliancy of mind and body then transforms into the state of calm abiding from this kind of place of equanimity. Anyone who's just joining now, I apologize. I did announce on the teaching last week, but I did not explain it via text or even to people who just tuned on I've been on the phone with. So I thought, and by the way, it was jokes on me because yesterday we find out that there actually was a class this morning at Tibet House, so I had to hop off from the class anyway. So here once again, if I had clairvoyance, so if we engage in meditation and we can calm our minds enough, we can get to the point where we can have the clairvoyance of seeing the future. So man, wouldn't that have been helpful if I had known, whoa, they're going to actually make class today at the Tibet House. So basically what we've been talking about is how limited our perspective is, and how those limitations cause us to misperceive reality, make bad decisions, not always make the best decisions that even are related to our kind of temporary goals that we have. So it's important that we get very, very wise. We get this intellectual understanding of emptiness that comes from our studies and comes from our analysis, but it's still moving around like this. And we use our shamatha meditation to get to this point where we can fix on an object. And that object that we're able to fix on is able to get grabbed and stop moving. And then we're able to focus more and more and more on that conceptual understanding of the nature of reality, and then eventually be able to have a direct, valid perception, a non-conceptual, non-mistaken, new, incontrovertible knower of the exact nature of reality. So we'll be able to have that arisal in our mind stream, but that arisal in our mind stream can only come if we get those kind of two things together in meditation. We have to get our intelligence strong enough so we have something to look at, and our mind calm enough so that it can, be calmly looking at it, so it starts to slow the movement down to the point where we eventually have this, as I said, a new incontrovertible knower that's free from conceptuality and not mistaken in regards to the nature of reality. So today, here's a good place to start, because folks who didn't know we were starting at 10 this morning, now we can go into the main body of the text. We did the introductory prayers already, and we now will start with the body of the teaching. And I just real quickly want to read, before we get started, the Sutra on Impermanence. The Sutra on Impermanence. It's the Anicca Ta Sutra, the Mitapi Nido in Tibetan. So we'll start with this. Homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling in Antapindada's park in the Jataka Grove in Shravasti, along with a large monastic assembly. The Bhagavan addressed the monks as follows. Hold on one second. Maybe take this. Here, let's share it. Hold on. I'm sorry, everybody. I got an idea here. Share. I'm going to do something. No. Sorry.
Live.
Okay. So we'll start over. I just hopped onto another app. Hey, everybody on TikTok, everybody on all the different applications. How are you? Okay, we're going to get started with the Sutra on Impermanence. The Sutra on Impermanence. Homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling in Antapindada's park in the Jeta Grove in Shravasti, along with a large monastic assembly. The Bhagavan addressed the monks as follows. Monks, 4 things are appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. What are those 4? Monks, good health is appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Good health, however, ends with sickness. Monks, sickness is neither appealing nor is it singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Monks, youth is appealing, singled out, considered valuable and pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Youth, however, ends with the aging of the body. Monks, the aging of the body is neither appealing nor is singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Monks, prosperity is appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Prosperity, however, ends with its decline. Monks, the decline of prosperity is neither appealing nor is it singled out, nor considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Monks, life is appealing, singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, and highly appreciated by everyone. Life, however, ends in death. Monks, death is neither appealing nor is it singled out, considered valuable, pleasant, or highly appreciated by anyone. Thus spoke the Bhagavan, the Sugata, and having spoken, the teacher added these words. Good health is impermanent. Youth does not last. Prosperity is impermanent, and life too does not last. How can beings afflicted, as they are by impermanence, take delight in desirable things like these? When the Bhagavan had thus spoken, the monks rejoiced and praised his words. This completes the Sutra of Impermanence. I find that just to be so wonderful because we really see how our minds can shift. Oh, I want to be prosperous, but prosperity ends in decline. Life is wonderful, but life ends in death. And it allows us to really rein things in. We should always remember impermanence, and that is what drives us to renounce cyclic existence. So, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So fortunate, so happy to be able to discuss this in the limited fashion that I can compared to Khenser Geshe Wandak, but I'll do the best I can to try to explain the points of view that Lama Tsongkhapa is making, and hope that you can then delve into, with your own studies, this text and become an even greater scholar than the greatest of scholars who are in this world currently that understand this text. Really, that's the whole point of giving these teachings. It was the whole point of Rinpoche giving these teachings. It was to inspire you to be able to find the truth yourself. There is nothing that I can give you from my own side as far as a blessing that's going to suddenly, I could maybe move my hands really quickly, and maybe it'll make you feel like a namdok, like something's happened, but really nothing's happening unless you start to apply these teachings to your own mind. So it's my goal to be able to just present this information in a clear format so that you can then liberate your own mind. The Buddhas do not wash away the sins with water. They do not remove your suffering with their hands. They can't give you their realizations. They merely teach the truth of suchness, and from there sentient beings are liberated. From there you will be liberated by following the stages of the path to enlightenment that we're so fortunate to have laid out. So when we look at the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and we look at the outline of the text, we can divide it into 4 categories. The first category deals with the greatness of the teaching's author. Second category deals with the greatness of the teaching. Third category deals with how we would listen to and explain a teaching that was so great from such a great author, and then how to lead students in the actual instruction. So starting with that first category, where do these teachings come from? Of course, these teachings come from Buddha Shakyamuni, but Buddha Shakyamuni taught in a very, very condensed format at times, gave teachings for beings of different capacities, as we'll learn, and there was so many scopes of individuals that the Buddha would talk to. We find 84,000 bundles of teachings. So if we were to try to sort all of those teachings out, if we were to try to understand what the meaning of all of those are and what capacity this fits into, and what level of selflessness this is talking about, and why Buddha seemed like he was talking about selflessness of person only here and selflessness of phenomena over here, and not being able to see how these things are all integrated paths in terms of the hearers, solitary realizers, and the paths within the perfection vehicle, and then the tantric vehicle, and so forth. So it becomes very difficult for us to be able to understand those pronouncements of Lord Buddha we find in the 100 volumes we see at the Chenrezig Tibetan Buddhist Center in the Kangjur. And then we have the authentic Indian commentaries, the 213 volumes that we see there. And these are the texts by those incredible Indian masters such as Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Nagarjuna and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Buddhapalita, etc. So many great masters. We find the 17 Nalanda Pandits, and their information is so vast and so clear, but for someone who's dull like me, it takes even more sorting out, because they're writing at such a high capacity at times, that someone like me needs even more clarification. And what Lord Atisha was able to do, and why Lord Atisha is highlighted in this text, and is as just the banner, even though Lama Tsongkhapa says the umbrella of this text is really the Abhisama Alamkara, Maitreya's ornament for clear realization. We find that this special emphasis is placed on Lord Atisha, and the reason for this special emphasis is that Lord Atisha was able to show us just how these were all very, very integrated paths. They were all teachings that were given to beings who were at various different capacities, and that Lord Atisha showed us in this incredible outline how we would be able to understand anything we read that the Buddha taught and see exactly where that fits in. And without that, if you're really sharp, high capacity, I encourage you, right? Read the sutra, and then you'll be able to understand exactly what the stages of the path are. Or maybe if you're just a little duller than that, you can just read like Nagarjuna's works and Asanga's works and be able to clearly just see how it all fits in. But if you're anyone like me and you just need to know exactly how it works because we don't have a lot of time and you've realized you're going to die and you don't know when, then it would make sense to have as much clarity around what we're supposed to be doing in terms of what will cause us to never have to suffer again and have bliss, right? We better be clear on that it's going to work, because a lot of people are selling happiness and bliss out there. A lot of it. A lot of philosophers selling complete end to suffering, and a lot of philosophies selling bliss. Selling bliss in nihilism, selling bliss in substantialism, selling bliss in arisal from self and others, selling bliss in all kinds of arisal from self. So we have to sort through it all. and figure out how we would apply that knowledge that we sought out to stages in an integrated fashion. So Lord Atisha, why was he so great? Lord Atisha was such an amazing being from the beginning. He's born into a noble lineage. He's an incredible prince who's already showing incredible signs. So we see in the great treatise on the stages of the path, it establishes Atisha's noble origin to show that he was this incredible prince. And then it shows you, how then does this being become so great? Does it just happen miraculously? Does Atisha, born as a prince and then chop wood, and then all of a sudden he can write the lamp for the path to enlightenment and show us how all the Buddha's teachings are not contradictory. They're all instructions for practice. We can easily understand the conqueror's intent, and then we won't abandon the Dharma. Is Atisha able just to be born and chop wood? So no. When we look at Atisha's life story, we see that how Atisha achieved the incredible scriptural knowledge and then the experiential knowledge. So how did Atisha gain scriptural knowledge? By having over 100 gurus and by studying scripture and by studying so much scripture that he actually gets to a point where he thinks there's nothing else for me to study because he hadn't been satisfied with impartial instructions, and then like holy beings show up and show him some tantric texts he's never seen before, and then he says his pride gets lessened. And he realizes, no, I don't know everything, and he's never satisfied with partial instruction. So we need to follow, if we want to have the realizations we hear about these great holy beings having. They don't just come from nowhere. We have to begin, I'm looking at the thing, where do we begin? We have to begin with our studies, just like Master Atisha did. We have to begin with understanding what it is that Buddha said can happen, what are the goals that can happen, and how do those goals occur. So the way that we can look at how those goals occur and what the Buddha said happen is we can look at the life stories of great masters who've achieved the goals seemingly that the Buddha said can happen, and that have presented these teachings and stages of the path in a very, very clear fashion. How did they become able to do that? So we see Lord Atisha had so many gurus, studied so many texts, and then how did he start to experience what he read about? What happened after gaining all of this wisdom arisen from hearing, and then the wisdom that arose from contemplation? What happened to Atisha's mind? So then when we look at the baskets of the teachings, all of the teachings can be divided into 3 baskets. Maybe you've heard of them. The Abhidharma basket, the Vinaya basket, and the Sutra basket. So the Vinaya basket is referring to the basket of ethical discipline. How did Atisha become learned in the Vinaya basket? He studied the Vinaya basket. And then how did he experience? What was his relationship in terms of experience to that Vinaya basket? Well, we see that he had the individual liberation vows. So when we look at individual liberation vows, we can divide them into 7 lifetime vows. There are 2 vows for the householder. Those are not considered ordination. That is not a monk or a nun. Those are vows that are identical for a male and female, where you abandon killing, where you abandon stealing, where you abandon lying, you abandon adultery, and you abandon alcohol, intoxicants. So the male and female, these are the lifetime vows that you can take from a lama as a householder. You are not a monk or nun. In this particular case, in the Pradamoksha vows and the Vinaya, but these are the first 2. Then there are the novice monk and nun vows. Then we have a probationary nun vow, and then we have fully ordained monk and fully ordained nun vows. So we have these 7 Pradamoksha vows. So in terms of the vows that Atisha held, he held the highest vows, right? The fully ordained vows. He was a male, so he had the fully ordained vows of a monk. So he had kept them so pure. His ethical basis was so pure. We know from an understanding of how we become Buddhas that the foundation of us becoming a Buddha is ethical discipline. Nagarjuna says it's the foundation for all other realizations to arise. Our ethical discipline allows us to concentrate better, and that concentration then allows us to focus on emptiness, which cuts the root of cyclic existence. So it's really necessary to begin with that foundation of ethical discipline. And Lord Atisha had this ethical discipline that we find that was so incredible, of being able to hold all the ordained vows and watch them like he would his own eyes, it says. Keep them at the cost of his life, keeping all of these vows so pure, keeping the refuge vows that anyone can hold without even having these pradamoksha vows so pure. So Atisha was so pure in his holding of the vows. We may need the charger for this phone right here, for the TikTok phone. Everyone on TikTok, I'm giving multiple platform teaching right now. So if I don't see your questions, I'm not ignoring you. I apologize. So Lord Atisha, he studied the Vinayas, studied what ethics was very well, and then he became very ethical in terms of the individual liberation vows, and specifically the ordained vows. And then we have the next basket, the sutra basket. How did he become very learned in the sutra basket? He studied the sutra basket, those teachings on concentration. Let me go back. I want to just make it more clean. So we go back. So Lord Atisha, when we look at the Vinaya basket, those ethical disciplines, Lord Atisha held the individual liberation vows, the vows of the fully ordained monk. Then also, he held the Bodhisattva vows, the 18 root and 46 secondary vows that were so pure. And he held them even at the cost of his life. He made sure that he didn't criticize others to try to make himself feel better, which is the first Bodhisattva vow. Lord Atisha was so careful with these Bodhisattva vows that he made sure they were just flawlessly kept. And then the tantric vows, he made sure were flawlessly kept. So he never forgot any of these sets of vows. And this is something that he clarified when he came to Tibet, that even those tantric practitioners were misunderstanding things when they were thinking they could do anything because of emptiness. They didn't understand that the foundation of the Vinaya was so important when we looked at the individual liberation vows and so forth, and the abandonment of the 10 non-virtues, and keeping those vows very clean, whilst keeping the Bodhisattva vows very clean, and keeping the tantric vows very clean. The highest tantric vows that you find have within them not abandoning the lower vows. So it's so important. So Atisha kept all of these vows very clean. So now we can move on to the sutra basket, those teachings on concentration. Atisha learned about that basket by studying that basket. Then what did he do with what he learned? He achieved the ordinary realizations into concentration that we find, and then the extraordinary realizations of concentration that you find. The ordinary realizations in the perfection vehicle, and the extraordinary realizations we find in the tantric vehicle. Then Atisha, we look at the Abhidharma basket. So we have the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket, and then the Abhidharma basket. The Abhidharma basket is the basket of wisdom. So this basket, how did Lord Atisha become learned in it? He studied the Abhidharma basket. What did he do with that learning? He had common realizations and the uncommon realizations related to the wisdom. So the wisdom we find a presentation of in the perfection vehicle, and then that clear light wisdom, this kind of union of subjective, objective clear light that we find presented in some of the other higher teachings. So he had these common and uncommon experiences with wisdom. So Lord Atisha did not just go do something very simple and all these things occurred. He had the wisdom arisen from hearing, the wisdom arisen from contemplation, then he experienced them from the wisdom arisen from meditation. So do not be satisfied with partial instructions. We have to know this information well. Your meditation shouldn't be dull and something that's just to chill out and to feel better, to calm down. This is something that it will be a byproduct of meditation. But when we look at Buddhist path, the purpose of meditation is to calm down, to cut the root of cyclic existence, to get out of samsara. And Lord Atisha, who we're talking about right now, who had such great experiences and great wisdom, understood this point. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you don't have renunciation. He was walking around, one day, and kept bumping into this practitioner who was engaging in various practices. They were circumambulating stupas. And Atisha said, "Oh, it's so wonderful, but you should engage in Dharma practice," and quickly walked away. And then, the person thought it's strange. And then he was down, he was maybe doing some mantras or something. And then Atisha came up, bumped into him again and said, "Oh, this is so wonderful, you're doing mantras, but you should engage in Dharma practice." And then he was maybe doing some other thing, maybe chanting something, chanting some texts. And then Atisha walked by and said, "Oh, this is really wonderful what you're doing, but you should engage in Dharma practice." And finally he grabs Atisha and says, "Okay, I'm reciting texts, I'm doing mantras, I'm circumambulating stupas. What are you talking about? This is all Dharma practice." And Atisha looked at him and said, "Throw away this life. You're doing all of these things for this life, so you feel better in this life. It isn't for a higher objective. You haven't not understood that this life is suffering, that this life is the suffering of change, that you will die. You'll be forced into another life, and more quickly than you'll even imagine. So all of this dancing and music and happiness that you think you're doing, and all of this spiritual kind of ornaments you're throwing on your happiness and dancing and music that's making you feel better about your happiness and dancing and music and making you feel better about yourself, because now you're a spiritual practitioner that happiness and dances and plays music. Now you can feel better about yourself because you're even better than those other people that are happy and dance and play music, because now you're a spiritual practitioner. Get it? So you are now believing that you have this new body and this new mink coat of I'm a spiritual practitioner that you can put on, that you can walk around with, that you can sit around outside of some monastery and chant mantras so people will say, "Wow, that's a real spiritual practitioner." And I can then react and say, "Wow, isn't it so wonderful? I feel so great about myself that I'm doing spiritual stuff and I'm such a spiritual guy and I circumambulate this stupa so others can see me and so that I can get this feeling, this sensation in my body that feels so good, and then I can tell everybody about where I went and I can tell everybody about what I did, and then I can recite these sutras and nobody else has memorized these sutras and I'm so much better at reciting sutras than everybody else, and it's just an ornament to put on like jewelry in this life, and it becomes a cause for more cyclic existence." And Lord Atisha didn't want that practitioner to be wasting their time. He wanted him to meditate on death and impermanence, to understand that we're going to die, we don't know when. The only thing that can help us but spiritual practice. He was seemingly doing spiritual practice, but the thing that was missing were those two things, and therefore it was for this life. And Lord Atisha knew, because he had the wisdom arisen from hearing and contemplation that he had when he got the understanding of the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket, and the Abhidharma basket, that he was able to experience this transcendent renunciation, that he was able to have this desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, that then he could apply to wanting others to emerge from cyclic existence and become a bodhisattva, and then a wisdom that would allow him to actually become a Buddha that would help all sentient beings and achieve his goals and all sentient beings' goals. This is what we need to do. We are no less capable than any of the beings that became Buddhas. And we can, from this very moment in our lives, decide that. We can decide we want the wisdom arisen from hearing, contemplation, and meditation. We can decide that. We can decide we want to be as good a being as Lord Atisha, a being who would walk up. When I say sometimes on TikTok, I say, "I hope your mind is virtuous." This is what Lord Atisha would go up and ask everyone. He didn't say, "How's the wife? How's the family? How are the crops?" There's a lot of stuff going on to ask, right? "Oh, how you been? How are the Yankees?" There weren't Yankees, but you get it, right? Lord Atisha said, "How's your mind?" Because he knew that it was from the mind that all of the experience, because it was a subjective experience that we were having, that every object we see had a subjective reality. And if our mind was virtuous, then It was going to make everything else a lot different, and that's all that mattered. Because if we said, my mind is virtuous, the conversation wouldn't be as heavy, right? And if my mind's non-virtuous, Atisha would be able to say, how do you feel? Right? And we can see the difference. So we see that Lord Atisha was so kind. And these studies that he did were so in depth. He was able to take the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya to Sangha to Vasubandhu and Dignaga and Dharmakirti. And we find even Sir Limpa in that lineage. And maybe, so we find so many of these holy beings, Gunaprabha, I believe, too, in this lineage that ends up at Lord Atisha. So he's sorting all this information out for us. And then the profound view lineage that goes from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri to Nagarjuna and beings like Chandrakirti and Aryadeva and Buddha Palita. And we see Chandrashita there, and we have Shantideva and all these holy beings. That then all this information lands at Lord Atisha, and then he looks at it all for us and figures out how to package it up. And then by doing all of this extensive learning and by coming to all of these conclusions and having the experience of emptiness and having all of these experiences, Lord Atisha then can clearly show us, you see all of these teachings Buddha gave. You see there's hundreds of volumes of them, hundreds of sutras, there's tantras. It can be so confusing, but let me let you understand this. They are teachings for beings of three capacities. And what you'll come to understand is that there's no contradiction in what the Buddha showed. And that gets us to our second category. The greatness of the teaching. What's so great about what Atisha shows us? We know it's so great about Atisha, but Atisha can't wash away our negativities with water, take away our non-virtues with his hands, right? No, he can't, give us his realization. So great. Atisha's such a greatly realized being. What can Atisha do for us? It can't. So he teaches us what the Buddha was getting at and how to interpret it so that we can then progress the stages of the path in a clean fashion and not misunderstand it. I hear so much misunderstanding all the time, and it's so unfortunate, and it's just a lack of study. That's all. It's a lack of study. Somebody's teacher had a lack of study, somebody's teacher had a lack of study, and somebody somewhere made something up. Has to be. Like really made something up when it looks like some of these views. And I don't claim to be some Madhyamika Prasangika expert, but you don't even have to be, you have to be like a little bit of knowing stuff when it comes to the Nalanda tradition. And if you know a little bit of little stuff in the Nalanda Sanskrit tradition, you can interpret every teaching. And what Atisha shows us is all teachings are free from contradiction. All teachings were given for the scopes of individuals. Every teaching was given so you practice it. This wasn't some intellectual game, something fun to do, something to talk about at a coffee shop. This was something for you to practice. Something for you to put into your life that would change your mind and turn it from your mind into a Buddha. That's it. All of the teachings Buddha gave were so that you could take your mind, or, Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo could take their mind from the state that it's at to the mind of a Buddha. To that same mind, So you see that these are instructions to practice, and then you easily understand the third point, that conquers intent. You see the whole point is to lead, Jane Schmo and Joe Schmo, whoever that is, to a state of Buddhahood through these these stages of the path. And then once we know that, we don't abandon the Dharma. We don't say things like, "Oh, this sutra is the best sutra. The other ones are donkey's milk." There's a whole tradition that believes that certain sutra is the highest sutra, and every other sutra. And at the time in ancient Japan, when this was pronounced, donkey's milk was considered poisonous. Imagine! And all it would have taken is someone to say that the highest of all ways, the holiest door, to come inside for the fortunate and good, right? The Buddha says stuff like that all the time. It's the highest of all ways. So now the Heart Sutras, and that's not the text that we're talking about. So I just want I want to caution you. Lord Atisha made very, very important points. And the non-virtue of abandoning the Dharma is the worst non-virtue. It's so bad. It keeps you in everlasting ignorance. It doesn't allow you to connect with the pure Dharma. You're gonna connect with this kind of like monkey brain idea of Dharma that comes from just some brain bouncing around and misinterpreting the teachings because they didn't have masters that slowed their mind down enough and had enough analytical understanding and enough studies and enough analysis of enough text to be understanding of the Vabhashika school, the Sautrantika school, the Chittamantran school, the Madhyamika school, seeing the distinctions of the Madhyamika Svatantrika and the Madhyamika Prasangika, seeing the distinctions of the two schools even in the Madhyamika Svatantrika. And I've seen everybody lost in the sea of these views, not even necessarily coming to even the Buddhist starting point, and then throwing away the actual ultimate truth in the process. So don't do that. Don't be satisfied with partial instructions. Atisha wasn't, and none of these great masters who actually realize the path and can explain the path with the language that you speak. If you speak English language, I'm speaking in English language, right? So if the person does that and can't explain exactly how you would go from your state to becoming a Buddha, at least in the general fashion with some specifics, then and they say something like it's too profound or you'll understand it when you see the light or something, then they don't know what they don't have the view. Their view is shaky. I see when I debate some people on these applications, when their view starts to shake, the name calling starts. The earthquake of their house and all of their life's work of views starts to fall down. Imagine how long? Imagine 20 years of complete misunderstanding because you haven't been so fortunate to meet with these kind masters. Wake up in the morning and be so grateful for Khensa Geshe Wandak. So grateful that Buddha Shakyamuni prophesied beings like Nagarjuna would come. Prophesied that Asanga would come. Prophesied that Lama Tsongkhapa would come. Lama Tsongkhapa, when he, in a previous life, handed a rosary to Buddha, and there was a prophecy that Lama Tsongkhapa would come. It came in so many forms, and got in the form of Gampopa to clarify the stages of the path right from the lineage of Lord Atisha. We're so blessed to come from this blessed lineage. Not to be arrogant, not to be cocky in some way, but to be confident. Why? The same reason that Chandrakirti is in the end of the Madhyamika Avatara. I don't have some special understanding or believe I'm the smartest, but I'm saying what Nagarjuna is saying. But so, I'm confident that what I'm saying is okay. So look at what Nagarjuna is saying. Look at how profound that is. Things do not arise from self. They don't arise from other. They don't arise from both. They don't arise causelessly. Find the object of negation. Find that object of negation is an objectively existent self. See if that self can arise from itself. See if that self can arise from something else. See if that self can arise from something that's itself and something else. See if that self is not caused at all. And when you'll find that it doesn't arise in any of those ways, the object of negation becomes objective existence. The objectivity of the object is the emptiness of objectivity. The objective existence of the object is the emptiness of objectivity. It's merely dependent origination. So this is where we need to get at. We need to be able to get at the ability to just, talk about these things and then sort them out deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is what Atisha allows us to do. This is what Atisha shows us to do. And then the Lam Rim Chemo shows us how to properly listen to the teachings through we don't want to have the faults of the three vessels, right? So if we want to be able to hear, have the wisdom arisen from hearing like Atisha did. We want to hear the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket, and the Abhidharma basket. We have to be able to listen right. This is all given to us with spoon feeding, folks. Lamin Tsongkhapa is spoon feeding us. Atisha is spoon feeding us this information. It's just so incredible, no? It's so incredible. I just can't believe it. As the deeper you get into the Lam Rim Chenmo, you're like, whoa! If I want to be like Atisha, I have to hear it right. Well, so Lamin Tsongkhapa is not making any kind of error in order when you look at this text. It's so brilliant. One of the greatest works that was ever presented in mankind history. Confidently, I feel this. So confident about that statement. One of the greatest works ever written, greatest pieces of literature, most important pieces of literature ever written, was the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So it shows us, if we want to be able to have the wisdom that Atisha had, we're going to have to listen to teachings right. We don't want to come to a teaching with like a biased, messed up mind. It'd be like having a pot we wanted to drink out of that had some kind of poison in it. It wouldn't be suitable to drink out of it. Right? We wouldn't come to a teaching with a contaminated mind with bias and so forth. We're not going to hear the teaching. We're not going to really listen to it. We don't want to have a pot. We don't want to be like that kind of pot. We don't want to be like the kind of pot that's upside down, not listening at all. You can't really make that a vessel for drinking. Try and pour something into an upside down pot. Nothing whatsoever even goes in it, let alone having just a morsel to drink. So if we come in with our own conceived notions or preconceived notions, it dilutes, it contaminates the teaching. So we don't hear it. We just hear ourselves. So that's not a suitable thing to drink out of because it's like a poisonous drink. If we have that vessel upside down, we won't even get a bit of a drink into it. If we're not listening, if we're like this. If we're like, oh, what am I going to do after this? This guy's still going on. It's been an hour and a half. Oh my gosh, he's still talking. I bet he's going to go over too. If we're thinking like that, then we're not listening at all, right? We have our mind closed. And then there's another option, right? Where we're kind of half listening, kind of half there. We're doing a few other things while we're listening to me teaching. No one really knows. You can't see me. I can't see anyone, right? You could all just be like in the gym right now, pumping iron with one headset with like AC/DC in. I don't know. Maybe you're doing that, right? I would have no idea. So maybe if you're only half listening right now, you're like a pot that you are going to like make your drinking vessel, but it has a hole in it. So all of the water can just leak out of it. So you maybe get a little sip, you maybe hear a few things, but your whole point was you needed a full glass of water, unfortunately. In this case, imagine you needed a full glass of water. But unfortunately, there's a little hole in the bottom. So you almost got the full glass. If you had had the full glass, you could have been a Buddha. Almost got there. Almost isn't good enough, right? Almost is samsara over and over and over again. Cut the root or don't cut the root. Almost is like if you have a tree in your yard, right, that's growing. Poisonous leaves all over it. And it's growing more and more poisonous leaves all over it. And then you go out and you say, how do I fix this problem? Let's see, maybe, really it's when I walk by it on this side of the tree, that, it's the front of the tree. So maybe if I just remove the leaves from the front of the tree, just kind of pick them off, with a good suit and gloves on, if I'm having some allergic reaction, if there's this tree. So imagine there's a tree in your yard, it gives you some sort of allergic reaction. Okay. And it's full of all of these leaves and stuff. And you go, well, maybe if I just take the leaves off of this part here, then when I walk by it, then it won't hit my arm. And there'll be less stuff to blow in the air because sometimes it irritates my breathing too. So there'll be less. So I'm going to, just remove, the side that I have to walk by. I'll just trim those leaves off. Would this be a sensible way to get rid of the suffering of this, experiencing having to have the rash again because you have this tree in your yard? Now you've pruned it a little bit. What's going to happen? All of the leaves are going to grow back. It's going to be like it was at some point in time or another. And then you'll brush up against it and say, oh man, now I've got this rash. The wind's been blowing, and here we are again. It's irritating my lungs, and I don't know why this keeps happening again and again and again. It was because you partially dealt with the problem. If you partially hear enough of the instructions, you'll do what you heard, and it's partial, and your suffering's just going to come back. Okay, so now, all right, I get you, I get it. I'm going to do like 50% effort. I'm going to cut like some branches off. I'm going to make this thing prune down to like where there's nothing. I'm going to make it so that this thing it's going to take a year or two, right? Who cares about forever? Today's today. We don't know when we're going to die. This is the best solution. Let's just prune it. Because who knows? Maybe this isn't the poisonous tree I think it is. So you prune it down to nothing. And then you're a year or two later and suddenly you have this problem again. Why? Because you had almost everything you needed to do. You cut it down to its smallest point. But unfortunately, it was still growing. What do you need to do? You got to cut the root. So nothing partial is going to work. Partial instructions aren't going to work. Rinpoche always used to say, if you want to cut the root of cyclic existence, it's just like cutting a tree. You're going to need the 3 baskets. You're going to need the Vinaya basket. You're going to need that foundation of ethical discipline. This is like a strong body that you would need if you needed to cut down a tree. So if you want to cut down the root, if you want to cut the root of cyclic existence, you're going to need the foundation of ethical discipline. But if you just have a strong body, you're not going to be able to cut that tree down. You're not going to be able to cut the roots of the tree. You would have to cut the roots of the tree for it to never grow back again. So just a strong body won't do that. So then you need what's called the sutra basket, the training in concentration. It's like a strong arm that allows you to cut down the tree. If your goal is to cut down a tree, to cut the roots of a tree. It's like a strong arm. If you have the training in ethics and concentration alone, you can't be liberated. If you have a strong body and a strong arm, you're not going to cut down a tree. I mean, you're going to hit it. Unless you're like some special kung fu, you're not going to cut down the tree. So now, in order to finally complete this duty, you need the training in the Abhidharma, the training in wisdom. The training in wisdom is like the chainsaw or the axe, whatever you want to say. That then combined with the strong body, a good arm, and the chainsaw can cut the tree, cut it at its root, remove that stump, Maybe you need a stump grinder or something at this final, You can certainly cut the roots of anything with the chainsaw. It may not be good for it, but this example works. It's something I watched happen. It's a funny story in my mind. That's why I'm laughing. If you have the highest higher training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom, then you can cut the root of cyclic existence. And if you perfect those things, then you become Buddha. If it's combined with the love and compassion for all sentient beings. So you see how you need to listen to these things very well so that then you can really, really realize everything to cut the root of cyclic existence. You can't leave any of it out. So you need to have these abandonments of these faults. And then have in your mind, it says 6 ideas that you are someone who's ill. You have the grasping at phenomena as being truly established and the self-cherishing attitude. It makes you do things that make you suffer and feel bad. That isn't a wise mind. That's not a very well mind. Identify that you are ill when you're listening to a teaching. It will make you abandon the 3 faults of the pot and listen well. Because you won't want to, miss anything because you're unwell and you want to be well. And imagine that the teacher itself is like a doctor who's diagnosing you, who's figuring out exactly what's wrong with you and saying, oh, this is what's wrong, that's what's wrong. You have grasping at true establishment. You have self-cherishing attitude. You don't have equanimity. You haven't realized sentient beings as your mothers. You haven't remembered their kindness. You haven't wished to repay their kindness. You haven't seen yourself as them as just as important as you, or looked at the downfalls of cherishing yourself and the benefits of cherishing others. You haven't taken on their suffering or given them happiness. You haven't switched your cherishing for their other cherishing completely. You haven't remembered their kindness in a complete way. You haven't decided that you would be the one that would cause their happiness and freedom from suffering. You don't have bodhicitta. Therefore, you can't become a Buddha without those things. You don't have the wisdom realizing emptiness. So these are things that we have to recognize. These are the things that the Buddha diagnoses us with and says that if you don't have these things, you can't be a Buddha, and you're going to suffer again and again and again if you don't have this wisdom, at least coupled with renunciation at a minimum, to become free from cyclic existence. And at the fullest potential to achieve the state of perfection, you need to have bodhicitta coupled with that wisdom. So we have to look at ourselves as those beings who are ill, who are listening, who are gone to a doctor who's diagnosed us and shows us the mirror of the Dharma, right? With our diagnosis, we look at the Dharma and we diagnose. The teacher diagnoses us, and we look at the teachings as the medicine that are like the cure for all of our ailments. We are so, imagine we're at the doctor and the doctor's saying, we have an illness that we can cure, but it could kill us. How carefully we would listen. How carefully would we listen to the instructions, what we would need to do, what we would need to take. And then the doctor says, this is the medicine. You need to meditate on love and compassion. The teacher says you need to meditate on the lack of true establishment of the self and phenomena. You need to meditate on the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. You need to meditate on the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. You need to meditate on the 3 roots and 9 reasons of the death meditation. You need to do this. This is going to be the prescription. You need to look at these teachings like medicine. Now, just because a doctor gives you medicine, diagnoses you and gives you medicine, you're not cured. You have to actually take the medicine. So we look at this next step. We recognize that we have to engage in the practices. The practices are actually taking the medicine. It's not like a normal medicine that we can just go, we take a pill. We have to engage in the stages of the practice. We have to have wisdom arisen from hearing, contemplation, and meditation. We have to have the wisdom about arisen in relation to the Vinaya Sutra and Abhidharma basket. We have to have the wisdom in relation to all of the here is solitary, realizer, and Mahayana vehicle in terms of both the perfection vehicle and the tantric vehicle. We have to achieve that final state of the completion stage of highest yoga tantra if we want to be able to be a complete Buddha. So it's going to be necessary for us to engage in a lot of practices, take a lot of medicine if we want to be cured of the grasping at phenomena as true establishment. And it appearing as having true establishment. It's going to take an enormous amount of work if we wish to get rid of not only the grasping but the appearances that are arisen from our subtle self-cherishing attitude and the imprints of the self-grasping mind that grasp at phenomena as being truly established and the I as being truly established. So we look at the Dharma as medicine that we take. We engage in the practices, and then we say to ourselves, oh, how wonderful these holy beings are, just to kind of stamp in our mind that this is why we're doing this. It's so wonderful. These Buddhas are so incredible. We stamp our minds with this idea, and we stamp our minds with the idea that may these teachings never leave this world, and that may my studying them make them not leave this world. May I be able to turn the wheel of Dharma. May I be able to free sentient beings from suffering. May the Dharma be contained within my mind stream. So we should be at the teaching with these things in our mind. Not about like, okay, we should go to maybe this coffee shop after that. You want to get Indian food or maybe Thai food, thinking about like this, because it's near lunch, right? We have a tendency to, our minds are so habitual. We have patterns in our minds that we can't even it's like, it's time to eat lunch. Our minds are just so out of control. Yogis don't even need to eat. They can survive on certain levels of meditation, it's said, right? So our minds could be in such more control. All right, we have bells that go off all day and night that tell us that we have to do this, you have to do that. It's time to make yourself happy right now. You haven't been feeling happy enough, or it's time to go feel happy. It's incredible, the bells that go off in our head. And imagine if those bells were the bells of the ultimate reality. Imagine if they were the bells of love and compassion that were always going off. And that's why we're trying to saturate our mind with this, is so that the bells that are going off eventually aren't bells that we need to sleep. We could have no need to sleep. We could practice day and night if we have certain levels of concentration. We wouldn't have a bell go off that says to sleep. The bell would be, we need to practice more. And now we have another moment to practice. Now we have another moment to practice. Our discrimination would be, our aspiration would be to practice day and night. We would have that ability to have the renunciation that's defined in Lama Tsongkhapa's 3 principal paths, day and night, seeking transcendent liberation, seeking that state which is free from cyclic existence altogether. And if we have that, our mind isn't going, time to go do something to make me feel better, because we know the only thing that can make us feel better is liberation. The only thing that can make us feel better ultimately is Buddhahood. So I think that makes a little bit of sense out of it, right? Why are we talking about how to listen to it? How are we listening to how we should? These 3 faulty pots and these 6 ideas. I'm finding so much joy in topics that I was so bored with 20 years ago because I was so ignorant and so closed-minded, right? We say that the point of our Dharma practice is to make our mind bigger and bigger and bigger. And I see it even happening in relation to my own mind in terms of topics. Every time I go through the Lam Rim Chemo, more and more and more. And now I'm studying Low Rig again, and my mind's ignited again in terms of debate and philosophy. Every time I go through it, I see how effective it is on our minds, and how effective it is when I'm even talking with someone. I say to myself, am I really listening to this person? Because the 3 pots are really talking about the omnipresent mental factors in a way. I come in contact with something, now I'm paying attention to it, now I discriminate it. Like, how well am I discriminating it? Am I really listening at that point when I'm now discriminating it, and I'm going to decide how this thing's going to make me feel, and then that's going to make me do something mentally and then physically go one way or another. It's amazing to see how these 3 pots bring you to that point of the discriminating awareness and the contact and attention and discrimination of an object, and how we can become much more skillful, and how I can see my own mind be so much more affected by these 3 abandonments and 6 ideas that I can be then giving a teaching even. And it says that when you're giving a teaching, you should look at yourself as the doctor. But it's very interesting because I have this mind that's a little bit, has a little bit of this in there. I don't want to play this false, I don't know anything. Has this in here. If I don't, after 25 years of sitting next to Khyentse Geshe Wandak, have some of this in there, there's something really wrong if he's asked me to continue these teachings, right? So if something hasn't happened and Khyentse Geshe Wandak said, oh, I want you to continue my lineage, then there's something wrong with the picture. So I don't have these huge realizations, but there's some insight into this that occurs because of the years of looking at these teachings, and I can see within my own mind. That's enough. That's enough about that. So anyway, good. So I hope that everybody can ripen their own minds and can let this information change them and really, really determine how you will act and react on a daily basis, because this is what it's meant to do. It's meant to change us. It's meant to make us start to act more and more like a Buddha, more and more loving, more and more compassionate, and have more wisdom to be able to know how to do that in the highest way possible. And these great beings that we have in our lives were able to do that in the highest way possible. And if we want to do it in the highest way possible, then we have to do what they have done. We have to do what Lord Atisha has done. And I just want to thank you all for allowing me to continue to do this. And as I was about to say, I will continue. I'll finish what I was saying. When I'm giving the teaching, I'm supposed to think of myself like this doctor, right? That's giving, this medicine, because I can't forget this point. But also, I'm simultaneously understanding that my life's impermanent. And as these words are coming out of my mouth, I feel so grateful to be able to be doing exactly what is necessary to move closer to Buddhahood. And it doesn't get lost on me that I'm so unwell, and that I grasp at the I as being truly established, and I grasp it, I become so addicted to that I want to cherish myself so much, and that as I'm giving this talk, I'm starting to go to war on those two things, kind of live on platforms and on Zoom. So you're giving me this chance to, dance on the head, as Dharma Rashita says in the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, on this evil, awful enemy of a self-cherishing mind, and that grasps at and the grasping at the I as being truly established. So I recognize I'm a doctor and a patient as I sit here and read these sutras, and I tell you about the things I remember Khyentse Geshe Wandak said to me. So does anybody have any questions? I can't see I'm quite not good at seeing sometimes begin. And I see. Let people know when the teachings begin and end. So yes, I've just started going live on TikTok, so I will do that in the future. I know I've just been popping out of the universe and going live just because I don't really know it so well yet, and I've been experimenting, but I will start announcing when they are. So thank you for that, and I appreciate the feedback. My whole point to doing this and having all of these applications in front of me is because Rinpoche asked me to continue the teachings. I know Rinpoche handed us such gold. I know that gold didn't have anything tarnished. I knew that it was a path that would get us to Buddhahood. I've seen it change my mind in ways that are just so incredible that I feel they have to be shared. I see myself having hope and being able to believe that it's possible that I in this lifetime will become a bodhisattva, that will be able to traverse the bodhisattva grounds, that I in this life will be able to become a Buddha, just like Jetsun Milarepa was able to in his life. I don't have the karmic seeds or that special realization that Jetsun Milarepa had to be able to just look at very, very simple things and be able to have incredibly high realizations from those very simple things. But I believe because I'm putting in the effort and I have all of this incredible wisdom that's passed down from the extensive deeds lineage, the profound view lineage, and the lineage of blessings, of these great tantric blessings and these great masters who've explained them so stainlessly that if I put in that extra effort that some of the holy beings may not have to have put in, that I will be able to clean my mind and I will be able to unite and understand the objective and subjective clear light, to find this union, find this treasure that is in me right now, that I've never found before, that I've never known before, and that I'll be able to understand because of Lord Buddha's teachings. And when I understand that, when I am able to understand the emptiness of my mind, may I be a bodhisattva at that time, so I land on the first bodhisattva ground. And I believe because this process is so clearly presented and so clearly identifiable step by step, that any being who has a mental consciousness that is not truly established can become Buddha, because we all have Buddha nature. We have the seed of the Tathagata. We have this clear light mind. And we have this proliferating mental consciousness that can be transformed into the Buddha. So thank you. You too, right? Don't ever feel like I can't do it or something. We all become Buddha. We all have this mind that will become Buddha. Chutabantaka couldn't remember one line to the next memorizing, and Buddha gave him some simple prescription to learn how to study, and Chutabantaka became an arhat. So if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you don't have renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you don't have bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. So we'll do the concluding prayers as we would normally do them. Thank you again for allowing me to engage in practices which will make me into a Buddha from this kind of broken mental place that I find myself at now. I can become unbroken because of this process. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. I pray that in all my lives I may never be separated from Kensur Geshe Wandak, whether it's in the emanation body, in whatever form he or she chooses to show, or when I become an Arya Bodhisattva, may I meet the enjoyment body, but whatever happens, may I never in any of my lives be separated from this kind, pure Guru, and when I become a Buddha, may I help Kensur Geshe Wandak in whatever form is necessary to free all sentient beings from suffering and fearlessness, and to achieve complete bliss. May I never, ever, ever think to bring sentient beings to any place but complete bliss, which is the state of Buddhahood. Thank you. I hope your week is awesome. We'll see you all on Thursday. And I hope that you can, have the foundation in ethics, concentration, and wisdom proliferate more and more and more in your mental continuum so that you can become a Buddha once you couple that with bodhicitta.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you end this?